I was a good father when it was too late.
I suffered for so long that I lost myself.
I was silent all my life, and I was left alone. I didn't take any risks, and I got nothing.
I try to do everything myself, and I stay alone.
You made a mistake by opening this video. And now, most likely, you will ask, why? And it's simple. Every mistake entails an action. Every action leads to a decision. Every decision creates a situation. And over time, this situation becomes a life story. Today I will tell you about the mistakes of people who are already over 60, without fiction or exaggeration. And we will start with Michael. This is Michael. He is 74 years old. He is from Ohio. An ordinary man with a simple life and ordinary problems, like most people. All his life he worked, made choices and followed the path that seemed right at that moment. But it was these decisions that over the years determined the life he eventually came to. This story will show that not all decisions turn out to be right, and that every choice always has its consequences. Michael realized that something went wrong, not because of a quarrel or because of loud words, and because of the silence. One morning he woke up and saw that there was no message on his phone. Not a single new one, at all. He checked again. Then again. And only then did he catch himself thinking that he was expecting this every day. His children did not disappear abruptly. They did not stop calling in one day. Everything happened slowly. So slowly that for a long time he did not even notice it. He used to be busy. Work, shifts, the way home, fatigue. He came late and believed that silence in the house was peace. It seemed to him that if there were no scandals, then everything was normal. When the children told something, he listened half attentively. He answered briefly. Often he put off the conversation for later. He thought that he would still have time. That the main thing was to give them stability. And closeness would appear by itself. Years passed. The children grew up. They had their own problems, their own families, their own lives. The calls became less frequent. The conversations were shorter. Michael didn't interfere. He thought it was right. That it was bad to impose. Now he sits in the same room where he once listened to their stories with half an ear. But now he can't listen to anyone. The phone is silent. And this silence no longer resembles peace. He can't say at what exact moment everything broke. Because nothing broke. There was no quarrel. There was no resentment. There was no point from which to turn back. He simply always chose work. Always chose fatigue. Always chose later. And now he understands, the connection does not disappear abruptly. It is erased when it is not supported. Michael does not say that the children abandoned him. He says otherwise. He says that he did not learn to be there when it still mattered. And now it is difficult for him to accept one thing. All this happened not because of one mistake, but because of hundreds of small decisions that seemed right. The connection is not broken immediately. It disappears when it is constantly postponed. And the scariest thing is to understand this when nothing can be returned. The connection is not broken immediately. It disappears when it is constantly postponed. And the scariest thing is to understand this when nothing can be returned. This is Linda. She is 68 years old. She is from Arizona. She lived an ordinary life, without loud conflicts and abrupt decisions. In most situations, she simply tried not to complicate things. Linda was used to being silent. Not because she had nothing to say, but because it was easier that way. Loud quarrels rarely happened in her life. She knew how to smooth out sharp corners, not to answer sharply, not to raise topics that could spoil the mood. She considered this maturity. She thought that peace in the house was more important than her own words. When she was spoken to in a condescending manner, she did not respond. When her decisions were ignored, she retreated. When she was in pain, she convinced herself that it was a small thing. She believed that if she kept quiet today, tomorrow would be easier. But tomorrow didn't happen. Over the years, people around her got used to the fact that Linda didn't demand anything. That she didn't have to be asked. That she would agree. They stopped taking her seriously, not because she was weak, but because she never showed boundaries. She continued to be silent. She didn't want to seem complicated. She didn't want to be the cause of conflict. It seemed to her that if she endured, she would save the relationship. Now she often recalls moments when she could have said something important. Not sharply. Not angrily. Just honestly. But then she chose silence. And this silence eventually became a habit. Linda can't name a day when she was no longer heard. Because that day never happened. People simply stopped pausing when they spoke near her. They stopped taking her opinion into account. They stopped noticing her presence. Now she understands, silence does not save a relationship. It only postpones the moment when you are no longer seen. And the hardest thing for her is not that she was ignored, but that she herself allowed this to happen for years. Silence seems safe, but over time it teaches others that you can be ignored. And when this becomes obvious, it is very difficult to return your voice. Not all mistakes look like fear or silence. Some look like patience, like the habit of waiting for the right moment. This is Robert. He is 81 years old. He is from Pennsylvania. He never considered himself a man who had lost his life. It seemed to him that he was just waiting. Robert always said the same word, later. Then he would leave. Then he would start. Then he would do what he did not have time for now. He did not have chaos in his life. There was work. There was a home. There was a clear schedule. He loved order and believed that first you need to do everything right, and only then allow yourself something more. When the idea of changing something arose, he postponed it. He did not refuse, he just postponed it. He told himself that now was not the best moment. That he should wait a little longer. That there is still more ahead. And so the years passed. He did not feel that he was wasting time. On the contrary, it seemed to him that he was preserving it. That patience was wise. That haste was for the frivolous. The problem did not appear immediately. At first, he had less strength. Then, he felt more tired. Then he began to refuse things, not because he did not want to, but because he could no longer. What had once seemed postponed gradually became inaccessible. Robert cannot name the moment when everything became too late. Because that moment did not exist. There were many small decisions not to change anything. And each of them seemed safe. Now he often recalls the things he did not do. Not with regret. Rather, with incomprehension. He still cannot explain why he kept waiting. What exactly? The hardest thing for him to realize is that he did not lose because of a mistake. He lost because of waiting. And now he knows, time is not taken away abruptly. It is given back voluntarily. Little by little. Day by day. Waiting seems safe. But it is precisely this that most often takes away opportunities. Not immediately. And then, when there is nowhere to turn back. Not all mistakes look like actions. Some look like lives that just don't change. Even when they've long since ceased to be normal. This is James. He's 75 years old. He's from Michigan. He's lived his whole life in relationships that drained him. And for a long time he thought that was normal. James can't say that his life was unbearable. He wasn't beaten. He wasn't openly betrayed. There was just always tension around. He was used to waking up feeling tired, even after sleeping. Any little thing could turn into a problem. Any conversation into cold silence. At first he tried to change something. He talked. He explained. He suggested. But over time he realized that every attempt ended the same way. He was told that he was exaggerating. That everyone lives like that. That at his age, they don't look for anything better anymore. And he agreed. Not because it became good, but because it became habitual. He began to talk less. To react less. To want less. He learned to avoid hot topics so that there was no tension. Over time, the house became quieter, but this silence was not peace. Years passed. And every time the thought of change returned, he told himself the same thing: it's too late. Too much has been lived through. Too much has been invested. It's too difficult to start from scratch. Now James lives alone. Not because he left, but because he stayed too long. He often thinks about what this life has taken from him the most. Not the years, but the sense of himself. He doesn't say that he regrets every day. He says something different. He regrets that he spent years convincing himself that suffering is normal. And now the most painful question for him is not, why did everything turn out this way? But, why did I not change anything for so long? The habit of living in a bad situation is often stronger than the fear of being left alone. And when this becomes obvious, part of life cannot be returned. There is another mistake that is often written about on social networks. She is rarely spoken about out loud. Because she looks like a force. This is Elaine. She is 69 years old. She is from New York. Her whole life she has been used to coping on her own. Elaine was used to coping on her own long before it became a problem. At first it seemed like just a character trait. If something happened, she did not panic. If it was difficult, she did not complain. She quickly learned to rely only on herself. When difficulties arose, she did not call anyone. Not because there was no one around. But because it seemed to her, everyone has their own problems, and it is not worth imposing yours. People are used to seeing her calm. Collected. The one who always holds her own. She did not speak when she was scared. She did not speak when she felt lonely. She answered the same way: everything is fine. Over the years, this became the rule. If she didn't show that she was having a hard time, it meant that she didn't need help. People around her gradually stopped asking deeper questions. Not because they didn't care, but because she never opened the door. In difficult moments, she was left alone with her thoughts. She was used to solving everything herself and considered it right. It seemed to her that if she asked for support, it would look like weakness. Over time, the calls became fewer. The conversations were shorter. There were no conflicts, quarrels, or sharp breaks. There was just always a distance between her and others. Now she sees it more clearly. She didn't lose people because of mistakes or quarrels. She gradually taught them to keep their distance. Every time she said that everything was fine. Every time she didn't tell the truth. The most difficult realization came later. It turned out that the habit of coping on her own doesn't make you stronger. She simply deprives her of the opportunity to not be alone. And now, when Elaine tries to be more open, it's difficult for her. Because people are used to seeing her as a person who doesn't need anything. She understands, loneliness doesn't appear suddenly. It is formed over the years, when you constantly show that you can do without everyone. The habit of coping on your own, over time turns into a wall. And when the need for closeness arises, this wall is already too high. These stories are different. Different people. Different decisions. But over the years they lead to the same place. None of them intended to live like this. No one made any drastic mistakes. Everything happened gradually. That is why these stories are difficult to notice in time. They look like normal life. And at some point it becomes clear that the matter is no longer in the story itself. And not even in this person. All these people are different. Different ages, different cities, different lives. But if you remove the details, one thing remains the same. None of them wanted such an ending. No one made drastic mistakes. They did not destroy their lives in one day. They simply constantly chose what seemed safe. They worked instead of being there. They were silent instead of speaking. They waited instead of acting. They tolerated instead of changing. They coped on their own instead of asking for help. Each individual choice seemed logical. Even the right one. The problem did not appear immediately. Over the years, these decisions turned into a habit. And a habit turned into a life that is already difficult to change. The most terrible thing in these stories is not loneliness, not loss, and not age. But the fact that most of it seemed normal. Until it was too late to return something. These people did not lose because of one mistake. They came to this gradually. Through dozens of small decisions that no one ever called mistakes. And that's why these stories are so easy to recognize. Because they're not about extremes. They're about life passing quietly. While a person convinces themselves that there's still more to come.